Will Hardy calls the second half the blueprint for the Utah Jazz offensively. Is he right? Generally, but there's still one or two pretty significant concerns. It's coming up after opening night of the Utah Jazz, next on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. We are also have a daily newsletter called Locked On Jazz you can subscribe to for free. Go to lockedondaily.com and subscribe. On today's show, we'll end discussing Keonte George's really rough opening night. I'm concerned about the shot selection and distribution of the Utah Jazz. Late game went down to the wire. 4 defensive mishaps that are all hard to handle cost the Jazz the ball game. Walker Kessler and Taylor Hendricks show up fabulously, but we're going to start with what Will Hardy called a blueprint for the Utah Jazz offensively. Their second half monster, which was led by one massive monster. The finish, Lauri Markkanen. Lauri, if you want to know why there was a 5-year contract signed to Lauri Markkanen and what the Jazz got and why everyone's excited and why that was the choice, and frankly, why the team that's coming in here next, the Golden State Warriors, really blew it, last night was the answer. Lauri Markkanen had 35 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. He was 9 of 15, 4 of 7 from 3, and 13 of 14 from the free throw line. Lauri Markkanen scoring 35 points on 15 shots all by itself is the blueprint for any offense. I'm actually not sure you can be a bad offensive team if you have that. As long as you have Lauri Markkanen going at that rate, your offensive rating is going to turn out to be pretty good. Jazz offensive rating last night was the 7th best of any of the 24 teams that have played so far this year. Nothing quite like Portland's 145 offensive rating or Cleveland's 137, but a 119.2 is pretty darn good last night, and it's because of Lauri. Single-handedly, that level of efficiency is a one-man offense that gets everything you want done. Now, there are some things that Will Hardy's right, and we'll dig into it of why he called the second half offense a monster second half, the blueprint for the way they want to play offensively. But the key to the whole thing is Lauri. The dude is literally one of the most efficient, incredible offensive players there is, and he plays at such a level of force. Memphis was holding and grabbing and physically just swiping at everything, and kind of the old school thought that they can't call a foul on every play. The Jazz actually did a pretty good job about handling turnovers, but some of the guys got a bit discombobulated by it. It's pretty forceful. I mean, everyone's swiping, and Lauri has the power and the strength to handle. He scored 19 second half points. We were plus 16 in the 18 minutes he was on the floor last night in the second half alone, and he just opened it up for everyone. He went, the front court guys were amazing. In the second half, Lauri was 5 of 7, Taylor was 4 of 6, and Walker was 5 of 5. Walker's second half was almost a double-double by itself, 11 points and 9 rebounds last night. But Lauri in 18 minutes was just a force. And a force getting to the basket, a force with open threes because he's got such an incredible look. The Jazz opened the game with a very clear intention of what they were going to be doing with their game plan. And that was that Zach Edey was going to be in drop. And so therefore you're setting off-ball screens with Walker on Jordan Clarkson or Lauri Markkanen, whoever it might be, popping out. And with Edey dropped, you're going to be wide open for looks. It's what teams used to do to Gobert. Edey doesn't have any of the speed to be able to move, so he's really going to be open. Well, Edey turned out to be such an incredible non-factor in his opening night of the NBA, lasting very little, filing out, and actually the Jazz just torching Memphis when he was on the floor last night. I mean, torching Memphis when he was on the floor last night. That the Jazz then had to pivot off of that game plan into something else, and in the second half, they got it going. In the first half, their overall offensive rating last night was a 92.6 in the first half. And it was actually, if you really dig into it, when Edey was on the floor, the Jazz offensive rating in the first half was a 137.5. In the 8 minutes that Brandon Clark played, the Jazz offensive rating was a 45. And then Jay Huff played with some other guys, but the Jazz were a 92.6 offensive rating in the first half. League average is about 110. When Edey was on the floor, the Jazz were a 137.5. They torched him. But the minute Edey went off, we couldn't score at all. In the second half, the Jazz offensive rating, it killed it with Edey was on the floor, was a 150, but it was a 150 all night. The Jazz offensive rating in the second half last night was a 148. So when Will Hardy says that's the blueprint of what he wants out of the Jazz offensively, that is the answer. The Jazz defensive in the second half was not as good. It was better overall in the first half, but that often happens. So, and Will is talking about this as being a blueprint offensively. In the first half, there was too much dribbling. Like I think yesterday or the day before on the show, I talked about 0.5. And everydayers appreciate you. Make your decision 0.5. Every pass, not every, but it felt as though every pass and every play was coming a second or too late. It felt as though the pressure that was being put on the Jazz by Scottie Pippen Jr. and these other defensive ball hawking guards was the fact that it just backed them up. They were playing on their heels. They weren't getting started into their systems. They weren't getting enough time to get into multiple actions into a play. And it just felt incredibly slow for the Jazz to get going into anything in the second half last night. And in the first half last night. And in the second half, every pass came a dribble earlier. Every pass came a second and a half earlier. Maybe a dribble and a half earlier. They were getting off the ball. They were moving it. They were finding the guy. There's a little bit of why Patty Mills was a plus whatever without taking a shot last night. Because just his veteran presence understood how to move the ball and where to put it in. I love the comment by Will Hardy after the game about Walker Kessler. That he has refound the childish joy of the game. There's no question that whatever happened with Walker last year, whether it was USA basketball, the injury, losing the starting job, the world was, Walker got into a place where the world was unfair. Like it just felt like the world was being unfair to him. I don't know if that's quite the right, but he just never looked happy. He never looked like he was enjoying himself. I've talked about this a lot. I look at Walker, I look at Keonte. I see them very much as my kids. I mean, they're the exact, Cody literally is the same age as my kids. And, and I talked to Walker about this year that my 21-year-old son last year was in Europe studying abroad and taking a backpack and a $45 plane flight and traveling Europe every weekend, having the greatest time of his life. And Walker was looking miserable playing in the NBA. And I asked Walker about this year and those are what Walker's friends are doing. Like if Walker's watching Instagram, that's what all his friends were doing. That's who his social circle is. And I asked Walker about this in the preseason, and I thought he gave a great answer. That he said, I just got to understand that I'm getting a chance to play the game I love, and it's a gift to be here and to be able to play every day and do this. And it wasn't a patented answer. It was a real answer. Because I know Walker well enough, and I also thought that I might get an answer of at times I think of, and I'm pretty 100% certain had I asked him that question last year in the midst of it, he would have given me, yeah, I know I see that all the time, and I wish sometimes I wonder, right? But he didn't give that to me to start the year this year. He gave me a very kind of mature, mental placed answer of hey, I'm here, I'm present, I love this, I'm taking this in, this is what I love to do. And he was revealed since he's working with a mental health or, mental mind coach. I don't want to call it health, but I don't know why, but just, I don't think he referred to it that way. And I think that's really evident in the way he's playing. And he was just awesome, particularly late. He was a dominating force in the game with a basket late from Colin Sexton on a handoff, a putback, tap in. That was really, really special. Walker was an absolute beast last night. We'll talk some more about it. Ron and I talked a lot about it in postcast last night of just what his body strength is doing for him. But really pretty fabulous on that. Jazz faltered down the stretch and lose this one to Memphis. We'll look at the defensive breakdowns late in the game. I think they're really interesting. I'm going to dig into them. I'll play the video tomorrow really digging them because it shows just how hard some of this is. The ball pressure definitely disrupted Keonte, and he had a brutal opening night. We'll talk about that. And then I'm a little worried about our shot distribution after one night of basketball, which is probably too early to be worried about it, but I'll at least voice those concerns for you as we continue today on Locked On Jazz. But I've got one other thing for you. There's a new award, charting, number, whatever you want to call it. And Lauri Markkanen came in second yesterday of this new NBA marketing metric. And I'll have it for you next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks does such great stuff, and it's such fun to play daily fantasy sports with Prize Picks. In fact, if you're trying to get into the game a little bit better, have a little bit of a better time each and every night, there's really not much more you can imagine than doing it with Prize Picks. Let me give you all the latest details on Prize Picks and what makes why you should download the app today. You also can use the code LOCKEDONNBA and you get $50 right out of the chute. So here's what Prize Picks has going for you, because it is just so enjoyable and so much fun for everyone involved with Prize Picks. That Prize Picks is going to give you a chance to win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get in the action in over 30 states, and only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. That's right. Pretty good deal for you. Right now, sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Pick discounts select players' projections up to 25%, even more value on your lineups. So if you're thinking football, you're thinking about Justin Jefferson will get more than 835 yards next week, or what LeBron will score more than 24 points. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season and basketball season, with players going off. Which ones are going on? Make sure you make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long with Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineups. Prize Picks. Run your game. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. The newsletters are out, and Empty the Noggin returns for you veteran everydayers out there. Empty the Noggin is back. So go to lockedondaily.com, click on Locked On Jazz, put in your new email. It's free. There's no hidden anything here. Free. That's how Locked On does it. We give you content for free. It's a wild concept. And you'll get the first return of Empty the Noggin from last night's ball game in the Jazz. So make sure you grab that at lockedondaily.com for your newsletter. All right. So Walker was really that's the Lauri being a beast. We knew Walker being this terrific is everything we're hoping for. It's really a nice development for the Jazz. Walker, if you missed it last night, totally fine. Walker ends up with 16 points, 14 rebounds, 5 block shots, but most importantly, late in the game, he's an absolute force on the basket and things. The defense with Walker on the floor was better than with Walker off the floor last night. It's always what I'm going to look at. John Collins is not a defensive center. So this is not to be critical of John Collins. This is just that it should be, and John Collins is a really good offensive player. So it should just be a real clear delineation each night that the team's better defensively with Walker on the floor if Walker's doing his job. Last night was a 116.7 when Walker's on the floor, with John Collins on the floor at center, or let's just call it non-Walker minutes. It was 125.6. So that's getting there in the correct area. It's a little hard to know what happened last night. The NBA doesn't have all their regular stuff up. The Memphis went 16 of 17 at the rim last night, which is kind of crazy. They shot 7 of 25 in the paint non-restricted area, which is an area where Walker could be impacting things, but it was it's not a It's not a great number there for the Jazz to have 16 of 17. So Walker was really terrific. I thought his pick setting was better. He cleared the offense better. I'd have to go back and look into the game log to see what the Jazz were offensively on various things and how they had success last night. It wasn't entirely obvious as the game went on. There was a lot of free throw shooting that we didn't get home till like 12:30 last night. It was crazy. The refs just called everything. I hope this is not some weird trend for the year. It's not anything anyone talked about. In fact, every conversation around the NBA in night one or preseason was that they were going to not calls, like that they were going back to where they were a year ago, and the offenses or whether they kind of changed, whether the offenses had all the advantages and took away the driving line. We'll talk about those with Keonte coming up. And it felt like the exact opposite last night. Every single foul was made. I'm looking quickly here. I'm not in all season form, just how the Jazz had success last night. On drives, the Jazz had a .96 offensive rating, which is only okay. They were poor in isolation, 21 isolation times .706, and their pick and roll is a .96. You'd like to be over 1. Handoff game was .82. The transition was really good last night. We did a lot in transition. We averaged 1.33 points in transition. This is interesting, and I'm doing this in real time. So we had 59 drives, 53 picks, 21 isolations, 32 handoffs last night. That's a lot wider variety than I think we usually play. I'll have to check and see if that turns out to be true, but that jumps out to me a little bit surprising. But just kind of that variation, that level of picks is low. Neither team ran a lot of pick and roll last night. Both teams were about 50. I mean, there's games with 80 and 90 back in the Gobert era. 21 isolations is a lot for us. I'm going to guess that might be happening in the first half a little bit. We're Keonte George and Walker Kessler ran 13 pick and rolls, and we were 0.64 pick and roll. Those two have not figured it out yet. Last year's Keonte and John Collins was the worst combination in the NBA. Keonte, John Collins and Jordan Clarkson was our best pick and roll combination in the NBA was for us last year, not the NBA, for us. And they went 7 times last night for 0.86. So a lot of numbers in there. Big takeaway. You know what? Actually, the pick and roll numbers are fine considering the night Keonte had. Keonte really, really scuffled last night. The ball didn't go in, and then he got frustrated. He was 3 of 18, 0 of 9 in the first half, 3 of 9 in the second half. The other player that played really, really well last night was Taylor Hendricks. He still made a lot of mistakes, and there's still some things like he is just so young, and basketball is so new to him. I mean, it was most obvious is late in the game twice. I thought there were times where he should have gone to foul, and he didn't foul when it's just like a no-brainer to foul, but just instinctually it's not there for him. He's just not an instinctual 10,000 hours basketball player right now. He is a 6'9", 220-pound, unbelievable athlete who is getting better every day, and it's going to take a process. And last night was a perfect night for him. That, he got the game open. He cannot dictate the game. We've talked about this all preseason. The game comes to him, and the game opened up in the second half, and he got much more involved, and he hit 2 threes, and obviously he's not going to shoot 60% from 3. But last night was a great night. He guarded Ja Morant. He had 12 points. He had 5 rebounds. And he played 29 minutes. Like, I want him playing 25 plus minutes every night to get over 1,800 minutes so we can find out who he is. He really did a nice job on Ja. He has a huge steal late in the game. His length is learning. Last year I thought he Velcroed picks. This year I thought he got through the picks a little bit better. 2 of the late game plays, and I was going to get to this here, are blown switches in which he's involved in. One of them's not his fault. One of them is his fault. And I'm going to really dig into them the 4 scores late in the game by Memphis last night were super interesting because some of them have answers and some of them don't. And I'm going to dig into those into tomorrow's show, literally show the video on our YouTube broadcast, but on the audio, I'll try to make it so you can see it. Ideally on audio, I should be able to paint a picture too. That's what I do for a living. Like on one of them, Taylor, they're really complicated, difficult plays. It's like when we're talking about these young players and what they're learning, they're super hard. The Marcus Smart gets a layup on a play, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow, but just to give you the idea. So Taylor's guarding Ja. Ja comes up to Marcus's high right. Okay. So the open part of the court is left, and Ja comes to the right side, if you're facing the play, of Jordan Clarkson, as though Marcus Smart's going to drive toward the baseline. And Taylor Hendricks has got to know, first of all, this is a switch. But when is he switching? It's super, super complicated. And so he comes up on the play, and Ja starts to go to the right side. Well, the minute Taylor takes one too many steps, Marcus Smart drives with his left hand into the open part of the court, and Jordan Clarkson goes to Ja Morant thinking he's switched, and Taylor's supposed to get back. And Marcus Smart beats him for the basket for a layup on a key play of the game. So, yeah, Taylor blew that switch per se. I put, for those of you on audio, I had those little quote things up. Super hard play. One, you and Jordan Clarkson have got to do this a lot of times together to figure this out. And two, it's not an easy decision of what you're supposed to do at the right moment, at the right time on that play at all. And there were just a bunch of those late in the game where Memphis put the Jazz into those decision-making, really tough moments. And it's why, like Will Hardy said last night in postgame, there's nothing quite like the final 5 minutes of game. You can't simulate it. You've got to play it. And the Jazz defensively just flopped last night in those minutes, but not out of like lack of effort or lack of desire, just probably really difficult circumstances you haven't been in before. And how do you deal with it? So I'll show you those tomorrow. They were really, and we also just missed free throws. Colin Sexton missed 2 free throws last night in the clutch. He missed 1 free throw in the clutch all of last year in 14 attempts. All right, Keonte had a pretty brutal night. Let's dig into and I made the comment yesterday, it only matters the ball. This ball's got to go in. And that is still the truth on Keonte. And that was not a great start for that. So we'll talk about that and figure out what's going on with that as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. And also a little disconcerted about our shot distribution on night 1, which could be a Memphis issue more than anything else. We'll talk about it all as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Game Time is the ultimate ticketing app. So they have all sorts of wonderful things going on right now. They have the Super Deal. And the Super Deal is where you're buying concert tickets or hockey tickets or basketball tickets to a game. And you've used the app. They know what you want and they give you the best deal that's out there. Instead of you having to stroll, whatever it is, through the 40 different seats and try to figure out what's best. Now, Game Time makes that doable because you get all-in pricing when you toggle the feature on. You get seat views, you get lowest price guaranteed, and you get Game Time ticket coverage. So you're in great shape. But this is even better because they've curated deals, make it easier to find the best price on great seats. The Super Deal, you can then look at the seat and make sure it's great. You know you're getting lowest price guarantee. You're getting event cancellation protection. It's all there for you. The app customizes your sheet for you and gives you and makes it easier and faster and easier for you to get done. So right now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. What time is it? It's game time. I promise I'll never do that ever again. Make sure you sign up lockedondaily.com for the newsletter and get Empty the Noggin. You can tell me, somebody tweeted at me, Empty the Noggin, old school. It's back. The backstory on Empty the Noggin, for those who don't know what it is I don't have any game recall at all. It's just the way my brain works. If you ask me what we did in Washington last year, I have no recall. So starting when I was a WNBA play-by-play announcer, at the end of every night, I would sit down and just make a bullet point of what happened that night because I always think it's super cool when a broadcaster is able to go back into a game and say, last time they played in the third quarter, such and such happened. I always think that's great. And I can't do it. So I write down all my key moments and look at all the things I want to look at in the game. And then I save it. And then the next time we play that opponent, I go read it. So I've always done that. Well, as content became a bigger deal, internet became a big deal, I eventually started publishing it. And it kind of was a hit, not to sound like people really liked it. And it's just it's not like a paragraph or anything. It's just random bullet point notes for myself to recap the game. And it's kind of a growing document. For example, there's 3 things in there that aren't in there right now that I wish were, that I went and added this morning because I thought about them overnight. But that's kind of how it is for me. And that's what I use it for. And then I published it. So, and it's kind of literally called Emptying the Noggin because I'm taking my noggin and just emptying it out onto a piece of paper at the end of a night and go to bed finally afterwards. So hopefully you'll like it. It's on the newsletter at lockedondaily.com. Go click on Locked On Jazz for that. All right. So Keonte last night goes 0 of 9 in the first half. It's the second most shots he's ever taken in a first half of a game. He doesn't make one. He'd never gone more than 4. On our chat last night on YouTube, people are super frustrated that he got pouty and upset. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Like he's 21 years old and he's 0 for 9 on opening night on a night where he's really expecting to, he's amped up. He's got expectations. I do like the 7 turnovers. There's 7 assists and only 1 turnover. Like let's give some credit. The shot distributions on Keonte is not great. So 2 things are happening. There is a book on Keonte that if you can pressure him at 75 feet and make him dribble and make him uncomfortable, and it works. And Portland did the same thing in the preseason game, and everyone did that to him last year when Jordan Lowry off the floor, and Scottie Pippen Jr. will do that. Now, I don't know if Golden State, if Gary Payton Jr. suddenly plays more than his 10 minutes he played last night in the main part of the game just so he can guard Keonte, then that's a little disturbing. Gary Payton played 14. Most of them were late. But they're starting Steph Curry and Andrew Wiggins. I don't think anyone's picking up Keonte at 75 feet on Friday night. I don't think Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, or Klay Thompson's doing that. So it's a unique thing to those teams that can do it. The one I'm curious to see if it's really a problem is that Keontae's signature move last year was that he would drive to the basket, duck his left shoulder into the defender, take the content, fade back, bounce it off the glass and in. And he got a lot of foul calls. He went to the free throw line a decent amount late at different times in the year last year off that. The league is really deciding that if the defensive player has a line and the offensive player moves into that line, it is not a foul. That is the big change the league is making on how they're calling that. Last year, if you dove into a guy through about February 20 or about December, if you dove into a guy, you got that call. After that, the league changed, and suddenly guys like Luka, who were strong enough to handle it, suddenly had monster years, and the smaller guys had a hard time because you drove in and you made contact and you weren't getting the call anymore. Keonte had 2 games last year with 8 free throws in March. His other big free throw games are December 2nd, January 23rd, which was after the change, November 22nd, November 27th. Like those are before the change. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not he's able to still get to the line with that move. If he's not getting that call, then he's taking a not very high percentage 7-foot banker fading away from the basket. And that's where his shot selection has to get better. Last year, Keonte was really good on off-the-bounce threes. Last year on pull-up off-the-bounce threes, Keonte shot 35%, which is a rookie is really, really good and was the best on the roster last year. And on catch-and-shoot threes, he only shot 32%. He should be able to shoot about 38, 39% on catch-and-shoot threes. And if he can shoot 35 or 36 or 37% on off-the-bounce threes, he's a bona fide three-point shooter. Will Hardy said he thought he bypassed some early three-point looks in the game that then kind of got him off rhythm. But if he gets those off-the-bounce early three-point looks, he has to take it. So when you look at Keontae's night last night, some of it's shot selection. Like, if we dig into Keontae's shot distribution last night and give him the benefit of the doubt, if this makes sense. So if I look at Keonte last night and say, okay, Keonte last night got no shots at the rim. He went 0 for 1 on corner threes and he went 1 for 5 on above the breakthroughs. So he went 1 for 6 from 3. Okay, on a regular night, Keonte should either go 2 of 6 or 3 of 6 from 3. Okay. He went 0 for 5 on long twos. Okay, well, that's going to be about, at best is a 40% shot if he's league average. So let's say he goes 2 of 5 on those. He had 7 shots in the paint non-restricted area. Again, at best, that's a 40% shot. So he took 7 of those. So we'll call that 3 of 7. If we're being generous to Keonte on just his shot selection alone last night, he only shoots 7 of 18. Does that make sense? You have got to get some shots at the rim. You've got to get some corner threes. You've got to get some shots that are easy shots that are going to go in at a high rate. But Keontae's shot distribution last night was so poor that even if he had an average night last night, in other words, he hits 2 of 6 threes, 33%. He goes 2 of 5 on long twos, 40%. He goes 3 of 7 on floaters in the range, 43%. Those are all like average. He goes 7 of 18, scores 14 points on 18 shots unless he gets to the line a bunch. That's a bad night. If we give him the benefit of the doubt that it's a good shooting night and he makes an extra 3 and he's 8 of 18 with 3 threes, then he scores 19 points on 18 shots. He better go to the free throw line 4 or 5 times, which he did. So the shot distribution's a problem. The shot distribution's a problem for the whole team. Keonte went to the free throw line 9 times last night. The Jazz last night took the fewest threes of any team that's played a game yet this year. And the Jazz took 33 non-rim, non-3 shots last night. It's early. I'm not going to get too worried about it. We were 15 of 28 in the paint non-restricted area. I know everyone likes that shot. Paint, non-restricted area. So paint, not rim. And everyone loves to call that points in the paint. And I get it. You get in there and it feels good. You're awfully close, all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, like, it's undeniable. I know, the floater, and so important in the game. You got to have, I got it. And I don't know what the other answer is. But the truth is, we can do this forever. It's a league average. It's a 44% shot. And that's only because league average keeps going up on that shot. 44%. It's 0.88 points. I'll let my opponent shoot it every single time. And we took 28 of them last night and made 15. We had a really good night. So that's a 44% shot. The league's gone up on it. They've gotten better at it, but still not a great shot. We only got 5 corner threes last night. Last year, we were a good corner 3 team. We were 2 of 15 on long twos. It's the most long twos by anyone in any game in the opening night other than the Knicks. Knicks took 18. So let's keep an eye on it. Well, I'm not freaking out. It's opening night, but the shot distribution last night wasn't great. And Keonte's shot distribution is not allowing him to have a good night. He has to be, with that 18 shots, he has to be so great to have a decent night. So he's got to find a way to get some shots at the rim, get some better looks, get some threes. But 9 free throws is great. For the Jazz, 33 non-rim, non-3 shots is a lot. Tough way to live. All right, fun opening night. I'll break down the defensive plays for you tomorrow. We'll have the Warriors coming into town as well, so we'll preview that one. Steph Curry, just so great. Get your tickets at utahjazz.com. SEG Plus is available. Empty the Noggin releases later today on our first Locked on Jazz Empty the Noggin newsletter. I'm kind of excited it's back. It was fun to write it last night. It's kind of just a total stream of consciousness. It's not a Pulitzer Prize winning in any way, shape, or form. Have a great one. Thanks so much. Appreciate everybody who said hi at the ball game last night. I do have stickers on order that I'll have for you throughout the year. So please do come by and say hi when I'm available. Some people came by at halftime. That's a super tough time for me to step away from the broadcast. I apologize. I did try to throw stickers back your direction. But hopefully, walking around the concourse before games, I take the effort to do that and look forward to seeing everybody. On video, we'll now send you the first ever national 24/7 channel Locked On Sports Today. And on audio, check out Locked On Game Night, NBA Game Night after every game.